Regional Studies Center Director Richard Giragosian joins us here on set today at CivilNet. 2 days before the election, we've seen polling results come out for the past few weeks. We've seen a campaign period lasting roughly 4 weeks. We've seen allegations of this, that, and every other thing you can possibly imagine. At this point, we're 2 days away from the election. Being as specific as you're comfortable with, tell us what you think will happen.
Well, there are actually two answers to that. One is if we look predicting the election results themselves, but secondly, is this an opportunity Armenia will miss, or will it be a chance for significantly improved free and fair elections? Let's take the broader question first. In many ways, Armenia, in terms of moving to this election, have built up expectations, both within and without. And it does represent both a challenge and a test of the government, but also an opportunity. And in this context, an opportunity that the government may very well miss. But in a more specific sense, what we see is the real conflict and political battle, if you will, is now within the ruling political elite. It's between the Republican Party and Prosperous Armenia, the junior member of the coalition. It's no longer the opposition versus the government. And there is something interesting that we've seen. In the pre-election rallies and demonstrations, large numbers of people are turning out for Prosperous Armenia. Many people genuinely interested and galvanized or mobilized.
Thousands in the rain yesterday.
Thousands in the rain, but more importantly, not being compulsive, not being forced to attend. In other words, unlike the Republican Party using administrative resources, which means exercising pressure on school principals, civil servants to come, this is much more of a genuine, much more grassroots feel. But it may not be enough, because what we see is the Republican Party controls the network of patronage, which is very important in terms of rewarding votes and punishing those who vote for other parties. And in this sense, I do think the most likely scenario will be the Republican Party will win in this election, but will fall short of an overwhelming majority and will be forced to form a working coalition. Prosperous Armenia, I think, won't do as well as expected and won't be able to really substantially improve their position. The net result, no matter if this scenario comes true or not, the result is the real conflict will move through the coming year until next year's presidential election.
So you don't think there will be any solutions, it'll just be a build-up towards what's going to happen next year?
Yes, I say this because we don't see enough reassuring signs that this will truly be a free and fair election, nor do we see any party or any powerful force capable of controlling the outcome 100%. Therefore, this is the first step of actually a two-part political confrontation culminating in next year's presidential election.
Sure. Backing up for a second, there are 9 parties who are on the, well, 8 parties plus a bloc. And if any party, and the only party that really has a chance at that is the Republicans, gets 66 members, then they more or less have a controlling majority and they can somewhat do whatever they want. You made the comment of missing an opportunity. What to you would indicate hitting an opportunity? What if we could say these elections really were fair and a party did actually get 65 or 66 or 70?
Well, wishful thinking is always welcome in Armenia. But in the land of reality, Armenia, like Azerbaijan, is undergoing a serious test this month of May. In Baku, it's Eurovision. The government there is being tested on performance and a song contest. In Armenia, we see a similar popularity contest where it's politics by personality rather than policy debate. But what we also see, if we go closer, we see the real interesting battle is only between the Republican Party, Prosperous Armenia. Petrosyan's opposition, Armenian National Congress, seems destined to return or to enter the parliament. The ARF, Dashnak Suchun Party, will probably stay the same, not lose much, but neither post any real gains. The Heritage Party, as the sole opposition force, is greatly weakened going into this election and is in danger of losing many seats. And interestingly, the third member of the pro-government coalition, Ordinats Yergir, Country of Law, is in grave danger of not sustaining any presence in parliament. But what I mean by a missed opportunity is this election will probably be better than previous elections. We do expect progress. My fear is not enough progress in terms of what the Armenian citizen deserves and what the Armenian government promises. And in this sense, it may be too little too late in returning Armenia on the road to real democracy.
Sure. In this particular interview, you're speaking quite a bit about this battle at the top between Prosperous and Republican. In our previous interview about a month ago, you had said things along the line of thinking that the Armenian National Congress would actually do things to benefit the Republican Party. Do you still feel that way?
Not necessarily, in that the Armenian National Congress is engaged in its own campaign. It's based on a presumption and an assumption of gaining parliamentary seats. Therefore, in many ways, the role of Ter Petrosyan's ANC really will become active and dynamic once it's in the parliament, but not during this election cycle. And therefore, despite the rhetoric and the posturing of trying to cut a deal with Prosperous Armenia or weaken the government, the Republican Party, I think its primary objective, reasonably, is to win election first and then engage in the power struggle within. But this is why this election is so important, because it won't end on May 6th. Right. It will gear up toward a continuation on the presidential, but also more close to home, a possible cabinet reshuffling, a division of spoils.
Deals being made all over
exactly,
the place.
In terms of sharing power and portfolios.
Ministers, all sorts of members of parliament, or of the cabinet, as you said. Is there anything you have that can substantiate this idea that maybe the ANC is looking to do things that would help the Republican Party? Because by all accounts, I mean, they are the sworn opposition, and they haven't said a nice thing about each other this entire campaign period.
Well, don't misunderstand my earlier comments. What I'm talking about is after the dialogue between Ter Petrosyan and Sargsyan, in terms of the decision by the Armenian National Congress to actually enter the system and no longer to stand outside throwing stones at the system. They're a part of the system, or will most likely be within the system. And that's the most clearest example that they want to begin to take their struggle within the parliament. And that, in a sense, is agreeing to play by the same rules as the government.
I see. Thank you for the clarification. Yesterday, we had the former president, the second president of Armenia, get involved and make a few comments, Robert Kocharian. In his comments, he said that they weren't directly related to the fact that we're 3 days from an election. But at the same time, when somebody who is so talked about makes comments like that 3 days before an election, literally everybody listens. So what do you make of his comments, and what do you think of him choosing to get involved at this point?
Well, I think what Kocharian was doing as a former president was nothing that surprising. In fact, he finally came out to clarify much of the media reporting about him in his name, etc., necessitated him to respond. But as we've read the interview, it's not directly political. There are messages within the text, of course, nothing to suggest an active return to politics, but his own interest in the process. But in many ways, what's interesting to me is Robert Kocharian represents the Moby Dick of Armenian politics. Everyone is obsessed with where's the whale, where is Robert Kocharian, what's he doing, what's he saying. There's more in terms of speculation underneath the waves, under the water, in terms of the iceberg of Armenian politics. And in many ways, the obsession with Kocharian is exaggerated.
You've given us so much to think about. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. We're not going to go party by party, because picking the number of seats, that's impossible and it's not worthwhile. But you're on the record as saying you don't think the Republicans will get to the 66. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to score an outright majority.
Okay. And when you talk about the Prosperous Party, you said not doing as well as some expect. Is there a number range you can put on what that means?
Well, to be specific, I don't see Prosperous Armenia able to maintain the current level of seats. In other words, they will be greatly weakened, but not weakened enough to become totally out of parliament. But they will actually fall well below their current threshold. But this is based on an assumption that this will not be a free and fair election in every sense. It's an unlevel playing field, and based on the advantage of incumbency, administrative resources, and most importantly, how the Republican Party controls the network of patronage. This is the key division. What's more interesting, though, is there's not that much of a division or a divide. We're talking about two parties that are vested interests within the current political system. The only good thing about that conflict is it creates more space for new ideas, alternatives, and forces open a very closed political system where the informal rules no longer apply.
Sure. Unfortunately, every poll we've looked at says that most people agree with you that this probably will not be, as we would like it to be, a free and fair election. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll, of course, hope to talk to you again after this plays out and, get into the real game after Sunday, as you said. Thank you, Richard Giragosian.
Thank you.